somewhere there's a person with a wound in the shape of your words. When even one person feels that way, you mean you get 500 one-star ratings, but one person is like, this changed my life. The resonance of it is just so profound. And to leave that mark and to have that connection with someone is just such a powerful part of being alive, really.
Welcome to The Whole Writer, a place where we talk about what it means to show up as a writer. Not just a better writer or a more productive writer or a published writer, but a whole one. Someone who's grounded in their voice, in their community, in their creative path, even when the world tells them to hustle, compare, or conform. I'm Nicole Meyer, a multi-published author and book coach who believes that nurturing the person behind the page is just as important as refining the words on it. Each week, we'll explore the terrain of writing life with honesty, warmth, and practical wisdom, creating space for you to write from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Whether you're drafting your first manuscript or publishing your fifth book, you'll find conversation and companionship for the journey here. So, settle in, bring your questions and your curiosity, and let's discover what it means to write and live with authenticity and purpose. Hello and welcome back to The Whole Writer, everyone. Today, I'm so pleased to have my special guest today, Ted Hawks. Ted is a writer, teacher, and creative coach from Chicago. His writing work spans LGBTQ literary fiction, YA, murder mystery, and science fiction. Passionate about fostering creativity, he strives to help others unleash their imaginative potential and confidently tell their authentic stories. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks so much, Nicole. It's just such an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
I'm so happy to see your face. For those listening, we have known each other because we came up through the same certification program and we met a while back. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, Nicole. I remember there was a little breakout room and we got to chat and connect. And it's so cool to see how far you've come in The Whole Writer. It's been so awesome to watch your journey.
Thank you. Well, same with you. And we're going to get all into that. But because a lot of my audience probably has not had the chance to meet you yet, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your fun bio that I just read. So you are all things, Ted. You're a writer, you're a teacher, you're a creativity coach. Can you kind of talk about how you arrived at where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been a writer. You probably can connect, Nicole. Like since I was 6 years old, I was writing stories and drawing pictures. And it just was a natural part of my life and how I grew up. And after I went to undergrad, Notre Dame, I went and taught abroad. And I was just thinking, and I was like, you know what? I really want to pursue writing even further. So I went into an MFA program and got my MFA and was really into writing. And actually, some of what we're going to talk about is the trauma of the MFA and how it sort of like halted my sharing and my growth as a writer in some ways. But once I got out of that, I was kind of stilted and I didn't know what to do. So I continued writing. And then the pandemic hit, and I think we all had those moments of reevaluation about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to connect to people. And I found book coaching. And it was such a cool opportunity. And I've loved being a developmental editor. I've loved my clients and helping people really get their books out there in the world. And then that's evolved into, beyond that, just creativity, like helping people really connect to the stories they want to share and how they want to show up in the world creatively.
Yeah. And that's what I love about your energy, Ted, is that you do really encourage all kinds of creatives to settle into who they are, their identity as a creative, as a writer voice, as a creative voice. And I can see that in all your social media and the way you reach out to people. So this is what sparks my excitement about you being here, is because you just seem like the person who is ready to help someone else's light shine. And that feels like your superpower.
Oh, well, thank you. That's so thoughtful. Thanks, Nicole. But yeah, absolutely. My mantra is everyone is creative and I will die on that hill. So yes, I love to help people connect.
Okay, so listeners, today, Ted and I are going to talk about something that I think is close to both of our hearts. And that is what we're calling the most daring creative act. And that is sharing your writing work. So let's really dig into this, Ted. The first thing I want to talk about with you is the difficulty that creatives have of sharing their work. There's so much resistance out there. You and I both know this because we're both writers, but why do you think it comes to so much resistance, even in safe creative spaces?
Yeah, Nicole, well, it's really fascinating because we're actually hardwired to resist the urge to share. Our brains have that fight or flight stimulus. So putting ourselves out there takes all that courage. But one of the larger things is we think about that individually as a decision, my choice to share and how that affects me. But a lot of what we're processing is actually our social situation. I was reading The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, and this was an absolutely wild statistic. He said, in 1 second, your conscious brain can process 40 bits of information. Guess how much your subconscious brain processes, Nicole?
I'm scared to ask.
It's 11 million. So your subconscious brain is making all these decisions and running all these programs, whether it's breathing, thinking, your muscle movement, all that stuff. But along with that is the assessment of your social situation, of the fears in your circle. So even if you're consciously trying to get through those blocks and trying to share and be a part of a community, our resistance is so subconscious. In some work I've read, they say to name your subconscious, that thing that's fighting you to get out there, to share, to connect, which I think is a fun way to approach it too. Like just say, hey, Paul, I know you're trying to protect me. I know you're trying to make sure I fit in socially and I'm not going above the crowd, but I want to share this. I want my voice to be heard. And I think I can contribute to the group rather than resisting it. So it's really a fascinating neurological situation when you're talking about sharing. So to honor that and that it's trying to keep you safe, but also move past it, I think is a really delicate balance. And it's a struggle that we humans have as just animals.
Yeah, wow. Okay, first things first, my mind is really blown by that scientific fact that you just gave about the subconscious. I had no idea. And I'm sure that this is going to percolate. And later on, I'm going to really be spinning out thinking about what else is my subconscious doing right now?
Yes. Well, Nicole, what's really cool, please read the book Incognito. It's about all of the stuff your brain's doing in the subconscious level. And it'll really open your eyes to the author posits, he's like, maybe we aren't in control of our fate. It's just our unconscious brain running things in the show. So it's really fascinating. So you have a whole programming system going on in the back. So you're fighting a lot when you're trying to make those big decisions like sharing and communicating your voice.
Wow. Okay. So that really helps me. Now tell me about really identifying and naming your subconscious, which is fear. We've talked about this in different parts of writing, that the fear is there. A lot of times it's good to acknowledge it. I always say, let it ride with you along in the car. I got that from Elizabeth Gilbert when she says, let fear ride along, but don't let them take control. So you kind of joked around that, I'm going to name my subconscious fear Paul, but does naming it sort of soften its power?
Yeah, it does soften its power. There's actually some mindset shifts I think you can take as well. One is just acknowledging, I think, just having an awareness that your subconscious is processing and it's keeping you both physically safe and socially safe is really important. I think it's also important in that conversation to call out that the physical and social pain actually operate in the same center in your brain. So shame and the resistance you have in those fears of sharing and putting yourself out there, they're processed in the same space as, getting burned on a stove. It's all cognitively the same. So you're right to be afraid of it. But there's a couple of cool mindset shifts I think you can take that can help this. And one is just thinking about the power of your sharing. Putting your voice out there and how it can connect to others is just so powerful. When I wrote my first book, I self-published it, put it out there, and I was so afraid of sharing. I was putting stuff together for a table tent to sell it. And I actually had my friend look up the reviews of my gosh. That's where I'm at, Nicole. So this is a very hot topic for myself as well. But I had him look up reviews and he sent me 10 really good ones. And it was just so powerful to see that it wasn't a bestseller. It didn't make huge waves. It wasn't on the New York Times list, but the power of just connecting to people and seeing them say this book helped me on my journey of coming out, or this inspired me in some ways. To have that impact on a person, even one person, is just so powerful. So that's one. And another is actually just thinking about shifting the conversation about fear of rejection to a fear of regret. One anecdote I really love is, whatever you think of Jeff Bezos, but when he was going to launch Amazon, he said, part of what he thought of is when I'm 90 years old and I think back to this moment, am I going to be proud that I stepped back, that I hid my power, that I didn't share my idea and my voice? Or will I really regret it as one of my main regrets as a 90-year-old person that I didn't take this chance to share that? And I think reframing that is a really powerful way to do that as well. And then lastly, I just read an amazing book called Tiny Experiments. Have you read this one?
Oh, I haven't. You're giving me a lot of good titles to check out.
Yes, that's where I get all my ideas. But Tiny Experiments is this brilliant book. And she is saying we have this culture of perfection and everything has to be fully baked and perfected. And she's saying what you really need to do is iterate and really need to try new things, really get that feedback, be open to sharing, connecting. And that's once again, just back to that sharing thing. If you share, you get that feedback. Even if it's a worst case scenario where someone says, this is the worst thing I've ever read, that's great data. You can say, oh, okay, it's the worst thing I've ever read. I need to do some work. What classes can I take? What mentors can I find? What reading can I do to help me improve this? So even just like those small iterations can help further you so much more. So taking that first step is really crucial. There's another quote I want to share, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. And he says, somewhere there's a person with a wound in the shape of your words. And the power, right?
Yeah.
That quote, it just hits so hard. But just the fact that you can share with one person and make that connection is worth every fear you could overcome in the process. 2, to recenter things as regret over fear or rejection. And 3 is thinking of it as creative iteration rather than just perfection. That you can have fun in the mess and the cycle and get feedback and share, and that will only make it better.
3 really strong but accessible things that a writer could do. So let's take you as an example. When we go back to when you wrote your debut and you put it out there and your dear friend read, I love that you had a friend that read the reviews for you.
I was so afraid.
And you self-published, you had the table tents, you were all ready to sell. Looking back on yourself then, did you tap into any of those 3 things yet, or were these things that you learned over time?
The impact piece didn't hit me until later when I started to read the reviews and figure out how the book connected to folks. And I think the iteration versus perfection was really profound because when I published my debut on Amazon in 2014, my friend in my MFA program literally said to me, that's social suicide. He basically saying that like it was the worst thing you could do as a writer is to share in that way. But it was a new frontier at the time, right? And it was this new space. And I wanted to explore it. And I'd actually gotten really wonderful rejections from agents. And I thought, you know what? It might not be the time. It might not be for a publishing house, but I think this work needs to be out there. And I'll see what's out there and see if it can connect. So those 2, I really felt like, taking a chance on the new form. Like now, of course, self-publishing is the part of the publishing landscape.
Yes.
But back then it was kind of like a bold move, I guess.
There was a stigma back then, but that stigma is totally different now. And I believe that more and more people are going to go towards self-publishing because everyone wants to take their own creative endeavors into their own hands. But gosh, I just love that, Ted. I mean, just thinking about your earlier self, writing that book and getting nice rejections, which to anyone who hasn't queried agents yet, usually get no feedback at all, or you get a sort of a boilerplate rejection. So for you to have sort of nice passes was great feedback. And then just your inner self said, look, this needs to be out there. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but you did it. And that makes me smile because I want so many writers to really listen to this and think, if that's me, would I regret looking back years from now for not taking that chance? Now, of course, we don't want to put stuff out there that's half-baked. If we haven't edited it, we haven't
100%.
polished it. But you really had this message to share. And I know your instinct, your intuition was saying, this is the time, no matter the outcome. And look at, you got people that your work resonated with them. So I love that.
Yeah, it was a cool journey. It was a lot of fun. And part of 2, like just sort of my ignorance in the platform. My book actually did really well on Amazon and I had no idea. I was like, it's fine. There it was. So you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, really great. Okay, you've touched on this twice, so I'm going to ask you, let's talk about your MFA experience. You've mentioned earlier that there was something about that program that shaped your understanding of rejection. So we've kind of talked about you in the querying phase and sort of putting yourself out there for readers to leave reviews. But let's really go back to even before that happened, when you did go get your MFA.
It was a really interesting experience because 1, I entered very naive. I was 25 when I started my MFA program. And I thought that it was just going to be this like wonderful Arcadian gathering of minds and you share your work and build on it. And what I found is that a lot of rejection, a lot of criticism was personal and unrelated to the work. And I took it very personally at the time. I had one in one of the wildest classroom moments of my life, I had a teacher call me a coward, not about my work, but just like about an idea because I did move to New York instead of Chicago after graduation.
Oh, wow.
I wrote a genre piece and the professor said, I don't have nothing to say about genre.
Yeah, they don't like commercial fiction.
They don't. No, it's not like murder mysteries. I think one of the deepest wounds was I wrote some LGBTQ fiction, including some of my debut. And the collective voice inside the room was, we don't need these stories. Gay people are fine. This isn't something that should be out there. Now, I'm much older and wiser now, but at the time, I took it very harshly, which is, again, what precipitated the self-publishing, is because I had found that. So when I came out of the MFA, I had taken these criticisms and I had my writer identity, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a part of the community anymore because it had been so tough. And then that's not to say there weren't wonderful parts of the program and wonderful teachers, but I internalized a lot of the negative, once again, through youth and not having a full understanding of who I was at the time. So for like 5 to 10 years, I wrote alone, very minimal feedback from people. And now I just think about how much I lost as a writer. I didn't get feedback. I didn't get to share. I didn't get the support of a community. I didn't get to hear diverse voices. I didn't open myself up to new experiences and to growth. So it's one thing I really regret. And if you watch my like creativity TikToks or read a lot of my blog work, I really, really hit on sharing because I think it's just such an important part of the creative process and so vital to life as a creative. We have the myth of the lone genius, but that's just so wildly wrong. And I hope if there's nothing people take away from this, it's that is total bunk.
Yeah.
That a writer cannot exist without the support of a community behind them.
Yeah. I do think that working in a silo is very archaic. It's an archaic way of looking at all artists because we need that artist community. Just think if you had like-minded writer friends back then. But what I love about what you said, and we have this in common, is that we are both serving our younger selves. So I am a coach because I desperately needed someone to walk alongside me when I was starting to write novels. And it feels like you are out there really championing other creatives because you probably needed that when you were coming out of that MFA program.
Oh, Nicole nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing more I love than getting an email from a young writer and just being like, yeah, you can do it. I don't care what you're doing, but you can do it. Like just jumping in. I mean, yes, exactly. Helping folks see their own power is something that it took me a long time to get to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this actually transitions into another thing I want to talk to you about is that subject of vulnerability. So when you went through the MFA program, you really sort of faced some feedback that didn't seem like it was necessarily tied to the work, but I've got to believe that shut down your willingness to be vulnerable. But we know, being writers, we need to bring our vulnerability to the page. So I'm curious how you allowed yourself to not shut that vulnerability away and to revisit it and let it come to you when you wrote, because you have multiple books out there.
Oh, wow. That's a really powerful question. I think one of the really paradoxical things is my most vulnerable work is that debut novel, ironically. So I think that's why those wounds were so fresh from the program and the feedback I got on it. But yeah, I that kind of mired in the work I did when I was alone and siloed was pensive and navel gazing. And it wasn't rich because I think you're right. I was like, had those walls up about how I wanted to be perceived as a writer rather than what I wanted to write, if that makes sense. So once I came out of that period and started doing my murder mystery series, I think the genre piece, weirdly, once again, my subconscious processing, it said, this is a genre piece. It can connect more easily to folks. And that's when I started openly sharing with people and bringing people into my process and beta readers and friends and people who I hadn't really opened up to about my writing. So I think I had to kind of trick myself and what I chose to write to be able to connect with people. But yeah, it was definitely a journey and it's still something I'm working on, I think.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? I mean, I can relate to that as a writer myself. You have these times where you're like, let everybody see all the parts and I want to share all of my work and all the motivation behind it. And then there are parts that we kind of really not recoil, but sort of dial it way back. So we don't share that vulnerability because we still aren't sure. As many books as we have out there, and I know this goes for almost every writer I've ever met. It doesn't matter how many times you're published. We still have that part of us that feels like, oh, it's scary to be vulnerable.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know about you, Nicole, too, but I also just feel vulnerable about my process as well. Because I've written 5 books and I have no idea what I'm doing. Like every time I sit down to write a book, it's like a brand new, whale to chase, my Moby Dick. But yeah, it's really tough. But it's so rewarding when you do share. I think that's something that is worth the pain.
It's worth it when you get the letters. You got feedback from readers, you got reviews, and that's worth it. That let you know, okay, I connected. And that's what we want. That's why we write. Writing is all about connecting, and it's about understanding humanity and someone saying, I feel seen in your work. I feel like someone heard me. I feel like someone saw me. And that really is worth everything.
Oh, yeah. It's the most powerful part. And like I said with my debut book, when even one person feels that way, you get 500 one-star ratings, but one person is like, this changed my life. The resonance of it is just so profound. And to leave that mark and to have that connection with someone is just such a powerful part of being alive, really.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question because I work with a lot of writers who do write genre fiction. I know personally as a coach that they're going through all this stuff on the sidelines, but they're writing like a thriller that has nothing to do with any of their personal insights. And they would say, that's great and all about being vulnerable and sharing the work and showing up as myself. But what if I'm really writing something that's so different from my life? What would you say to them about there are ways to still share your work and share who you are, even if it's something wildly different from your personal experience?
Well, first of all, I'd say that no matter how bonkers the thing you're writing is or what genre or where you're going with it is that it's all about character, and people respond to characters who are real and have real feelings and real thoughts and real hopes and real dreams. And that's all vulnerable stuff that you can share through your characters. So I think if you're hiding some of that or your characters go to that extra depth, that's something to think about as well. But two, I think there's so much power in every genre and what it elicits, whether it's romance, whether it's thriller and the excitement it invokes, or humor and letting people kind of relax and find connection through laughter. Every genre has a unique way of connecting with people, and it's through the characters and their vulnerability that it really does. So I think that's a way to think about it. When I'm on the page, I always think about, are these characters real? Is there something to connect to that people will relate to? Will people feel like they're seen and heard? Even if I'm writing about, I have a sci-fi book about a nail salon technician who fights space aliens. And the whole time I was thinking, is this character real? Can someone see themselves? Can they laugh at this? So I think finding those connections points is really critical.
Yeah, I love that you said all of that. It feels like a good permission slip to every writer out there who says, well, I'm not trying to solve world peace or anything like that with my fun sci-fi horror, whatever it is, but you are saying something about human nature. You are connecting through your protagonist. And I love what you said because it does feel like you are reminding the writer that they have something more to say than just an entertaining story. They are definitely speaking about their view, their specific, authentic lens on the world.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's exactly it. No matter what you're sharing, it's your unique perspective. No one could share it but you. So share it and be vulnerable.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about sharing, and I'm sure some of the listeners are saying, that's great and all, but I don't have a writer friend. I don't have a community. So can you kind of encourage and explain ways that someone working alone in a bubble might be able to start finding the right community, the right people, finding ways to share? What would you recommend?
It's that really weird flywheel situation where you find that the more you share, and this could be at work, it could be with your friends group, because you might have a friend who's writing a book, but if you've never shared with them that you're a writer and you're writing, you might not make that connection. Also from the Daniel Coyle book, The Talent Code, I want to talk about the subconscious processing. One of the case studies he does is the Bronte sisters. And he talks about the myth is that they were just sort of these brilliant women who grew up together, and they had a strong father figure, and they were just these artists that flourished in this arid desert. But his counterpoint is these were three creative, curious girls, and they were constantly writing together, constantly getting feedback, challenging each other. And it's just how three women, isolated, but together creating this community, made some of the greatest books of English literature. So don't think that just because it's you and your friend who get together and get coffee and chat, if you both have a common interest and both can connect and both can help make each other's writing better, that is so powerful. I think so many times we default to online and your Substack and your Instagram and how many followers, but just a small local community can be so powerful. So I would say, one, share as much as you can with as many folks as you can and see how you can create those connections. And then don't think that just a small group is a problem. That can where some of the greatest minds come together and the great creative stuff can come out of it.
I love a small group.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was writing my first 2 books, I was in a group of 3 and I was the third. And one was a memoir writer, one was a travel writer, and then there was me, a fiction writer. And we didn't necessarily share our work, but we got together once a month for coffee and we were support. We talked about what was going on in the industry. We talked about how hard it was at different points in our manuscript. We talked about how in the heck are we going to get published? And that was magical. Nowadays, I kind of meet with other writers where we do share work, but back then, that's all I needed. And that felt like enough of a share. Even if we weren't ready to share actual manuscript pages, it was magical.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my writer friends I text. I have my really good friend from college. We share stuff all the time, but those small communities are just so wonderful.
Yeah. And you can honestly meet them if you go to an author event at the library, or you can go to a writing festival or a book festival, anywhere. And writers, in my experience, and probably in yours too, they're not going to turn you away if you say, hey, do you want to exchange information? Or I see we live in the same town. Would you ever want to get a cup of coffee? I've never met a writer that says, no, I have no time for that,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's the vulnerability piece too. Like, even if they do, don't take it personally and maybe ask them to connect you to someone who would have time. So always think creatively about how you can connect. And a closed door isn't, it's an open window. So maybe someone can't meet with you, but maybe they know someone who can, or can connect you to a book or a piece that opens things up. So be open, be vulnerable, and connect with as many people as you can, because your community builds so quickly just by doing those simple things.
Yes. And follow your gut. I'm sure you've had this too, but I definitely in my early days would sometimes line up with a critique group or so and say, oh, they don't quite feel like my people, or this person feels slightly competitive to me. So let's maybe keep moving on or keep iterating that group. So I would just say, listen to your own instinct on that. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. That's an amazing point, Nicole, too. Yeah. It gets to the point where you're in a group and you feel like the critiques aren't about they aren't about helping you get better, but are competitive or are personal. Yeah, walk away. Don't be afraid to walk away from groups that are toxic as well. It's a really important part of it too.
Yeah. Okay, so let's turn around to a happy note now that we talked about a little bit of toxic stuff. I want writers to know how they can find you and the ways you work with them, because I love the idea of a creativity coach. I am such a fan of someone who can walk alongside anyone when they're doing a creative endeavor. So first talk about what you do in your job and then ways that writers can work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a book coach and then creative coach. So if you need book coaching, I really focus on LGBTQ fiction, mystery, thriller on the genre side. So you can find my whole book coaching section on my website, tedhawks.com. On the creative side, I have a TikTok channel, Creativity with Ted. And that's if you're just like dabbling in creativity, if you're just trying things out, I have a bunch of creative tips and exercises for you to go through, kind of play and get your creative wheels working again. But I also do some creative coaching as well. So creativitywithted.com, you can see some of my packages there for groups or for individuals. I do a creative questionnaire that you can do and fill out yourself, and then we can consult on it. So yeah, many ways to get in touch with me, always down. And as we just talked about, I'm a writer. So yeah, absolutely would always love a cup of coffee as well. So yeah, you can find me online, tedhawks.com, or at Creativity with Ted on TikTok.
I love it. Well, we will all be looking at your TikTok and watching when your books come out too. But also writers, I really encourage you, no matter what phase of the book writing stage you're in, to reach out to Ted if what he said resonates with you, because he's amazing. And like I said, if you want a cheerleader, if you want someone to help you with your story, he's definitely a fabulous resource. So thank you so much for being with us today, Ted.
Oh my gosh, Nicole, this was a blast. Thanks for the great conversation and the great questions. It was so much fun.
Loved it. Okay, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I will see you next time on The Whole Writer.
If you want to check out my coaching programs for fiction writers, visit NicoleMeyer.com. That's MEIER. And if you like this episode, I'd love you to take a minute to leave a rating and review for this podcast. This will help more writers like you to discover the show and to get going on their writing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, happy writing, everyone.